Dust choked the air as the train whistle screamed in the distance. Jake Turner's boots froze on the wooden platform. His hands shook so hard he dropped his hat right into a mud puddle. "Well, ain't that something?" laughed old Pete from the feed store, leaning against a post. "Big tough rancher scared of a woman." Jake bent down and grabbed his muddy hat. He didn't care. His heart was pounding too loud to hear the laughing. 3 weeks ago he had done something nobody in Red Creek expected. He walked into the town saloon, right past the poker tables, and asked the traveling preacher to write a letter for him. A letter asking for a bride. A stranger's bride. Men had stared. Someone spit tobacco and shook his head. A cowboy named Hank had laughed so hard he nearly fell off his chair. "You, married, you can't even talk to the girl who sells eggs." Jake had said nothing back. He just handed his coins to the preacher and walked out into the sun. That was the thing about Jake. Folks judged him quick. They saw a quiet man who worked alone, who barely said 10 words at the market, who ate his supper standing up because his table only had one chair. They thought he was broken somehow, too shy, too strange for love. But every night, alone in his cabin, Jake stared at the empty chair across from his. He listened to the wind howl through the cracks in his walls. He was tired of silence eating him alive. Now the train's whistle screamed again, closer this time. Black smoke curled into the blue sky. The whole town had gathered to watch, whispering behind gloved hands. Jake straightened his crooked hat. His boots stepped forward toward the tracks, toward the unknown. "She's common," he whispered to himself. His chest tightened. Somewhere on that train sat a woman named Clara, a stranger who was about to become his wife. Jake didn't know that everything he expected was about to burn away like morning fog. The train screeched to a stop. Steam hissed across the platform like an angry snake. Jake's eyes locked on the door, waiting for it to open. One passenger stepped down, then another, an old man with a cane, a mother holding a baby. Jake's eyes darted from face to face, searching for Clara. Then she appeared. Her dress was torn at the hem. Dust covered her boots. She carried only one small bag gripped tight in both hands. Her eyes looked around the platform like a frightened deer. "Clara," Jake stepped forward, voice shaking. The woman flinched at the name. "No," she said quietly, "my name is Mary." Whispers spread through the crowd like fire through dry grass. Old Pete leaned toward Hank. "That ain't the bride he was promised," he muttered. Jake's stomach twisted. "Where's Clara?" the letter said. Mary's lips trembled, her eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink away. "Clara got sick," she said. "On the train days ago. A fever took her fast, real fast." Her voice cracked like dry wood. "Before she passed, she made me promise something. She said a good man was waiting here alone, hopping. She didn't want him left standing at an empty station." The whole crowd went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Jake stared at Mary, his mind spinning. Was this true, or was she lying, running from something? Everyone around him whispered doubts, but Jake couldn't look away from her eyes. They weren't lying eyes. They were tired eyes, broken eyes. "Mister," Mary whispered, "I understand if you send me back. I couldn't let her promise die with her." Jake glanced at the crowd, then back at Mary. His heart pounded against his ribs like a drum. Slowly, he picked up her small bag. "Well," he said, voice rough, "guess you're coming home then." Gasps rippled through Red Creek. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Jake didn't know what he had just started, or how much this mysterious stranger would change everything he thought he knew about love. Smoke curled from the sheriff's cigarette as a stranger rode into Red Creek. His horse was covered in dust. His eyes were sharp and cold, moving over every face on the street. "Look in for a woman," the stranger said, his voice flat like stone. "Ran off from her husband, named Sarah, but she might be using something different now." Jake stood frozen by the feed store, a sack of flour in his arms. His blood went cold. That night Jake found Mary sitting by the fire, her hands twisting together. Her face was pale as milk. "There's a man in town," Jake said slowly, "asking questions." Mary's eyes snapped up. Her whole body went stiff, like a rabbit hearing a gunshot. "Jake, her voice broke, tears spilled down her cheeks. "My real name is Sarah. I ran from a man who hurt me, beat me near every night. I switched names with Clara so nobody could follow me here. I never meant to lie to you. I just wanted to live." Jake said nothing. The fire crackled between them, loud in the silence. "You gonna turn me in?" Mary whispered. Outside, dogs barked. Boots crunched on gravel, getting closer. The bounty hunter was walking the street, knocking on doors, asking neighbors questions. Jake's jaw tightened. He looked at Mary, really looked at her, at the fear shaking through her small hands. "Get in the barn," he said suddenly. "Now." Mary didn't argue. She ran into the dark, disappearing behind bales of hay just as Boots stopped outside Jake's door. A hard knock rattled the wood. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead and opened the door slow. "Even in," the bounty hunter said, eyes narrow. "Heard you got yourself a new wife." Jake's heart slammed against his chest. "That's right," Jake answered, voice steady despite the fear crawling up his spine. The stranger's eyes searched past Jake, into the dark house. "Mind if I take a look around?" The whole town seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if Jake's secret would survive the night. "Mind if I take a look around?" The bounty hunter's boot pushed forward. Jake didn't move. His arm blocked the doorway like a fence post. "Ain't nothing to see here," Jake said, voice low and hard. The stranger's hand rested on his gun. "Now, that ain't a friendly answer, friend." Neighbors gathered near the fence, whispering fast. Hank's face was pale. Old Pete gripped his hat tight against his chest. Nobody breathed easy. Then the barn door creaked. Mary stepped out into the moonlight, her legs shaking but her chin held high. "Stop," she called out. "You're looking for me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The bounty hunter's eyes lit up like a wolf spotting prey. "There you are, Sarah," he said, stepping toward her. "Don't come closer," Jake growled, stepping between them. Mary raised a trembling hand. "Wait, let me speak." She turned to face the whole town. Her voice cracked, but she kept talking. She told them everything. The beatings, the fear, the long nights running, hiding, praying for a new life. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she didn't stop. The crowd went silent. Even tough old ranchers wiped their eyes. Hank looked down at his boots, ashamed he ever laughed at Jake. Just then the sheriff pushed through the crowd, badge shining in the moonlight. "That's enough," the sheriff said sharply to the bounty hunter. "Beatin' a woman ain't lawful where I stand. You best ride on out of Red Creek." The bounty hunter's jaw clenched, but he saw the crowd's angry eyes. Slowly he climbed on his horse and rode into the dark, disappearing like a bad dream. Silence hung in the air. Then Jake stepped forward and took Mary's hand gently. "Don't care what happened before," he said, loud enough for everyone. "I care about the woman standing here now." The crowd erupted into cheers. Someone threw their hat in the air. Mary looked up at Jake, tears turning into a small, brave smile. Under wide, star-filled skies, Jake and Mary stood together, finally safe, finally free, finally home.